Meeting of the Superior School District Board of Education. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We have met official compliance, with all notifications. Roll call, please.
Laura Gapsky. Here. Nick Olson.
Here.
Brooke Taylor. Here. Ed Gallagher.
Here.
Nick Schumacher.
Here.
Sarah Hubert McCohen. Here. And President Olson.
Here. At this time, would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education held in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for comments by members of the public during the meeting as indicated on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to address the board on any of the topics included on tonight's agenda may do so by signing up on the public comment sign-up sheet near the entrance prior to the start of the meeting. The board requests refraining from making any comments involving personally identifiable information about students, staff, or administration. Comments should be respectful, focused on items being considered by the board, and will be restricted to 3 minutes in length. Action taken at today's meeting will be final approval unless otherwise noted. First on the agenda, at our last meeting, comments by members of the public. The committee of the whole heard from the following people about standards-based grading: Lee Sims, Kyle Smith, and Tyler Ross. And at this time, I would entertain other comments by members of the public. I do see that we have 8 people that have signed up to speak. 7 of the people referred to Lee Sims, which I believe may be an attempt to allow Lee to speak longer than the 3 minutes. The board, you do have latitude to allow Mr. Sims to speak longer than the 3 minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve. Seconded.
Motion is second to allow Mr. Sims to address the board longer than the stated 3 minutes. Any discussion?
Meeting 21 minutes? Like, are we here or what are we doing?
Well, there's 8.
Yeah, there's
24
minutes. Oh, 7 plus Lee. Okay. Lee, are you giving yourself your time?
I am.
Defer to someone else.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Mr. Sims.
Thank you for allowing me to speak again. Last week's meeting, and unfortunately, I feel like one perspective mainly was allowed to respond to board member questions. I got 3 minutes and the discussion was an hour and a half, so hoping to expand a little bit more. I get it. I get it. At last week's committee of the whole, I was able to hear from teachers and administrators about what the power of SBG is. And I believe it. I have seen it with my own eyes and have felt the positive changes in my own classroom regarding how I communicate with my students. Because of this transition to SBG, I know I am better at giving feedback to my students about what they have learned, what they haven't learned, and how to improve. I've also experienced and enjoyed the benefits of that communication on the parent side of things, where my focus when talking with parents is about what we are learning about in class instead of just their grade. I believe in what was described as the power of SBG because I have experienced it. And I was glad I was here last Monday to hear from my colleagues and my administrators about what that power of SBG is. However, this experience in the growth of communication does not negate, supersede, dismiss my experience with the diminished discipline, grit, and accountability in the learning process on a daily basis and what students actually know and can do. I believe most of what I have talked about and what many have talked about are symptoms. Lack of engagement in formative work, not following deadlines, not trying on summative when they already have a grade, moving slower through the curriculum, lower ACT scores. These are all symptoms of a problem. What is the problem, in my opinion? So I ask you, everyone here, why do you come to work? What is the number one reason why you come to work? Sure, there may be many reasons, but what is the number one priority of why you come to work? And before you answer, thinking about this, one of my top 5 favorite movies is Jerry Maguire. And there's a couple of quotes from that movie, and I'm going to ask you if you can think of one of the quotes. And no, Mrs. Sims, it's not "you had me a hello." But I have a $20 bill here. Can somebody tell me what I would say the most famous quote from that movie is?
Show me the money.
Show me the money, right here. Show me the money. $20. Show me the money.
Let's put this up.
I would ask that we allow Mr. Sims to make his presentation, that the board refrain itself from any dialogue back and forth.
You see, the current problem with the way we do SBG is that it negates the number one motivator in the real world, and that is counting. Us staff were surveyed this spring about our priorities when considering solutions to our multi-million-dollar deficit. Number 1 was salary and benefits. Show me the money. Last week, food service was falling behind with inflation, so they needed to increase school lunches a dime. Show me the money. Salary schedules have changed over the last 10 years. Show me the money. Every year we come to negotiate because show me the money. What we do on a daily basis matters, even those little things. What we do, how we do it, and what we get when we do it matters because it counts. You do this, you get that. Or you don't do this and you don't get that. It is objective accountability. We have no such thing under our current SBG model. Without the number one motivator in the world, objective accountability, everything becomes personal, and this is draining. We are told you are better at making relationships with your students. These issues would not exist. If we were a more engaging teacher, these issues would go away. And I truly don't believe that's what admin thinks. But what else are we teachers supposed to think when issues exist and the only message is make better relationships and be more engaging? We must be the problem. However, time and time again, our teachers are told how amazing we are, how much of a great job we are doing, yet the problems persist. I mentioned last week the comments that I and that many of us teachers hear all the time. It's formative, so it doesn't count. I already have a grade for that standard, so it doesn't matter. The primary focus is on the policy, not the teacher. So I'm really struggling to find any real-world application to how our current SBG practice is reflected in any workplace, anywhere. Yes, I know deadlines can be flexible. Make no mistake, teachers have and are willing to work with students when uncontrollable circumstances arise or when people are doing their best. But that's not what's happening. The learning process, formative, is optional. Deadlines are optional, and at times summatives are optional, and that is not how the real world works. A running analogy was offered up last week, and it was commented that, hey, if a student crosses a finish line without doing the work of the race, good on them. Tell that to the 14,000 people coming to Duluth in 2 weeks, all the work that they put in. What that looks like is basically the gun goes off, the kid hops in the golf cart, gets dropped off just before the finish line, they cross the finish line, and then they get the finisher's t-shirt. Having that t-shirt, everybody assumes, hey, you ran the race. In the real world, you want that shirt, you run that race. Or say we're having somebody build a house. Would you pay someone because they showed you they knew how to build a house? No, you pay them because they show up every day, working hard, putting nails in boards, and actually building the house, because every day counts. That's the real world. Here's another analogy specifically regarding the policy of only taking the highest grade. I know a kid, this part is true. I know a kid 2 weeks ago who got a $450 speeding ticket in front of Catlin, or on Catlin Avenue in front of UWS. So this analogy goes, so this kid goes to court to contest the ticket. The officer is there to confirm, yes, they were speeding. Then the judge says, we'll tear up the ticket. You don't know $450. You passed your driver's test a while back, proving that you know how to drive safely and follow the laws. And then the judge looks at the officer and says, you know, officer, if you made better relationships and engage the citizens of Superior more, everyone would stop speeding. Follow the traffic laws. Dismissed. That is a connection with the reality of what we are doing with that particular policy. In the real world, when hourly workers punch for their shift, every minute counts. And when salaried employees need to take a day off, they have to pay a sick day or pay a personal day. And if they don't have a day to pay, their pay is docked. It is reduced because every single day counts. Imagine our district operating under the system. Teachers only get paid on evaluation day. Sick and personal days aren't a thing anymore because it matters not whether the teacher is present from day to day or how good of a job they do for day to day. However, on the evaluation day, the teacher can show some sort of proficiency and get paid, no matter what they've done or not done the previous 4 weeks. To give you a glimpse of what a 1 would look like for a teacher, this would, on that evaluation day, the principal would basically have made the lesson plan and basically co-teaches with that teacher. Then, because the teacher would want their full paycheck, a 3, they ask for some specific feedback, reevaluate the next day, do what the principal said, and boom, they got a 3, their full paycheck. But this works so well in the elementary schools. I ask you, what happens when students choose positive behaviors over negative ones, like doing their schoolwork, their homework, helping someone out, being nice? They get paid. At Bryant, they get golden tickets. Or there's Cooper Kudos at Cooper that students can accumulate and buy things they want, like toys or clothing or backpacks. My own kids are pumped when they buy something with their golden tickets because of the good choices that they make. Other elementary schools do this, and please do not eliminate it now that I've expressed how much it works to motivate kids to choose positive behaviors. So what do our older students want? What motivates them? I asked them last week. I passed out a short questionnaire and told them, which is honest, I'm doing some research on how I can be a better teacher by understanding what motivates students. Interestingly, I was a bit taken aback by how many students immediately said, Sims, don't change a thing. You're doing great. This was also while we were eating cake that several of them made me, which said, sorry, we are annoying. Those girls talked a lot. But I asked them, what motivates you most academically? The options were learning, grades, or grades and learning equally. Sure, there could have been more, but I want you to guess how many of the 61 students said learning alone. 2 out of the 61. 17 out of the 61 said grades and learning equally. That's 28%. 42 out of 61 said grades alone. That's 97% said they're motivated by grades. Of course they are. That's the payment for their hard work and learning. We say it's not about the grade, but instead the learning. And I think that we're completely missing where they are at, which is exactly where the rest of the world is too. Things count. I spoke to my principal last Friday about much of this, and I genuinely felt heard. And I believe there is interest to get people together beyond the shared leadership group to discuss this. However, there's very limited time to talk as a board and community about this, and it's summertime. Regarding shared leadership being the group to address this, as was mentioned last week, just because somebody can commit to the time commitments of shared leadership throughout the year and apply for the team, why should that mean they don't get a say when problem solving on this big issue? And this is a big issue, not just an issue for a couple of people who are willing to speak at a school board meeting. Again, 81 secondary teachers responded to SFT's question regarding which grading system they would choose if given a choice. 5 of the 81 chose our current practice, only 5, leaving the other 75 indifferent or on a spectrum of some change to blending with traditional to scrapping the whole thing. Then why so few speak up about concerns? Let me ask you this as a hypothetical. What if your boss began a new initiative requiring you to complete a non-anonymous survey asking your opinion on a scale from 0 to 5, 5 being all in and 0 being I do not want to do this? And then all your coworkers and maybe you who chose a 0 or 1 received a mandatory support meeting with administration about how to get you on board. Do you think those colleagues feel supported? Wouldn't that set the tone for what one should do when they have concerns? There is fear of retribution for speaking up, and that is a fact. So why do I speak up? Because I still believe that together we can tackle our district's biggest challenges. I have not given up on us. We can do this together. We must do this together. It's all for our kids, and they are worth it, even though it's hard. To me, the situation is very similar to our discipline challenges 3 years ago. Month after month, teachers brought up the discipline challenges in labor management meetings with no progress. Finally, after the district learned that about 50% of teachers at all levels wanted to quit teaching right now, a task force was created. People came together to listen to each other, to learn with each other, and we all learned that restorative practices doesn't mean no consequences. We made the code of conduct better together, and this has transformed our level of behaviors in our buildings. We had a group, we had labor management, but this particular issue needed more. Similar with cell phones. Us teachers got no traction reining in inappropriate cell phone use until there was objective accountability, and I thank you for that. Use it and you get a referral, which is likely to lead to a detention or possibly a cell phone plan. Do this, get that. So I offer this solution. And I know I've sent this to you, but I'm just going to say it now. I offer this solution. Ones across the board still earn a passing D- 60% of the grade. Same as it currently works. And there would be no negative impact on our increased graduation rates because students can still have zero participation in the learning process and obtain basic proficiency on standards with lots of help. That would not change. All 2s across the board would earn a C- or 70% of the grade. All 3s and above would earn a maximum of 80% of the grade. 1, 2, 3, 60, 70, 80. That leaves 20% for a formative standard or a Spartan grade standard that actually count towards their grade. Another thing would be to allow individual teachers to choose how standard scores are determined. And I know we talked at length about this, and I think we got some good conversation about it. But allowing teachers to choose either the highest score, the mean, the mode, etc. Also, deadlines must count somehow. Absolutely nothing about the power of SBG, that being communication, would change. We'd still use proficiency tables. We'd still give quality feedback on where students are at and how to improve. There is nothing to lose regarding grad rates or communication. It would only be gains in what motivates students and the rest of the world, objective accountability. I believe the symptoms of our current system would quickly and significantly subside, similar to our progress with discipline and cell phones. SBG loses nothing with a compromise. I'll end with this. My father was an administrator for the University of Minnesota. So I got to hear a lot about how the real world works, the working of things. And one thing he taught me was that sometimes programs or initiatives, once much of their mission has come to fruition, begin to only exist for the sake of themselves. I keep hearing, well, if we make changes, then it wouldn't be SBG. Who cares what it's called? I truly believe in the gains that we've made with the power of SBG, and that is communication. But in the absence of objective accountability, our current practice is left wanting. It's okay to be honest about what SBG can and cannot do. Let's rebrand it, Spartan-based grading, whatever, I don't care. But ultimately, let's do what's best for our students together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Snips. This time I'd entertain a motion to approve the disposition of minutes from May 13, 2024.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Motion and a second to accept the disposition of minutes from May 13, 2024. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next is the report of the superintendent. Our first is an informational item.
And do you have the graphic for this or no? Okay. The last couple years, we've been trying to celebrate our guest teachers, and we have sent out a nomination form in the spring to our staff asking for some nominations, and we've had some great representatives last couple years. This year, we want to recognize Tim Stradiotti. He is a regular substitute teacher at the middle school. I just want to say a couple things that folks said about him. He had many nominations. He's here for the kids. He always brings his best energy and positive vibes. He strives to deeply understand the content he's teaching and follow the sub-plans. So he recognizes how important those sub-plans are and the work that teachers have put into those. And he really works hard to try to make sure that that is implemented the way they desire. He's willing to fill in wherever he's needed. I know the staff at the middle school appreciate him. And lastly, I think one of the quotes that I like the best is that he's a cool cat. And he's fun and kind. So we recognized him on the last days of school, and we thank him very much.
Him and a group of his cohorts were together last Friday. I saw them and they were pretty excited about it. He's a pretty energetic guy and known him for a long time. Also, that last evening, or my goodness, last Monday at the committee of the whole on June 3rd, Principal Ryan Harrelson shared updates on the Great Lakes Elementary School. He gave a very thorough descriptive plan to us of where they've been, where they're going, and what some of his concerns are for the coming year.
Which I say, I really like his implementation of combining LSC with
Just did.
Bryantton, reforming their master, the colors, all that stuff. I think he really went beyond trying to incorporate those new students in the school.
And it was good to see that it was in our local newspaper as well.
Yeah.
A follow-up like that, so. Thanks, Ryan, for doing that. There were no discussion items. There were no action items. Board committee reports, policies and rules committee, no action items, no discussion items. Informational items that evening at the committee of the whole meeting, Captain Bill Lear from the Superior Police Department presented the report on the School Resource Officer Program 2324 pursuant to policy 8407. Bill was asked a few questions that night, and I know that he'll get some answers back to us, and we look forward to working with Bill this coming school year.
Motion to accept policies and rules committee report.
Motion the second to accept the policies and rules committee report. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Personnel and Negotiations Committee, one action item, administration recommends approval of the June 2024 new hires and separations report.
Move to approve.
So,
Motion and a second to approve the administration's recommendation of new hires and separations from June 2024. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. There were no discussion items and no informational items.
motion to accept personal negotiation committee.
Second.
Motion and a second to accept the Personnel and Negotiations Committee report. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Operations Committee, there's a new action item this evening. Administration recommends approval of Resolution 24-02. I'm sorry, that is not the new one. That is not the new one. Compliance Maintenance Resolution, CMAR summary.
Motion for
Second.
Motion is second for the approval of Resolution 24-02. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Second action item was an administration recommends an increased cost for all student and staff lunches that will take effect on July 1, 2024.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion in a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. There were no discussion items. There was one informational item. Buildings and Grounds Long Range Facility Update. David C., our Director of Business Services, walked us through a little bit of that entire plan. All the 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, all the way out to 10, 15, pretty extensive, so. And then there was a food service update from our Director of Food Service, Jamie Wilson, new summer food service flyer. And then some information of removal of 25 cents per meal charge for reduced status students will take effect on July 1, 2024. This cost will be subsidized by Fund 50, the food service account.
Motion to accept the operations committee report.
Second.
Motion and second to accept the operations and committee report. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. The Teaching and Learning Committee action item. Resource approval. The administration recommends the adoption of the following curriculum resource to support secondary math courses. These courses are needed to meet 7-year curriculum cycle needs and content area standards.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to second to approve the resource for the math course, the secondary math courses. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. There were no discussion items. Informational items tonight, we have Kate Tesh, our Director of Continuous Improvement and Assessment for end of year reports.
I apologize for my absence. I watched the meeting in Chicago at O'Hare where I was, I felt like sort of a prank to never be able to leave there for about 9 hours. I hung out. I could have driven home. So thank you. I'm here tonight with 2 policy requirements for annual reporting. I'll start with bullying and harassment since that's up on the screen. The policy states kind of a summary year end with data around bullying and harassment and also some of the kind of specifics around what we're doing as a district. Obviously, principals can get way more specific with this. So this is a pretty general overview, but I wanted to share that with you. So in the presentation here, I have included the 2 main policies related to bullying and harassment. It's an anti-harassment policy, harassment policy. So we've got our definition there below on our beliefs around providing a really safe, productive, nurturing climate in our buildings. And then we break it down more specifically into what is the definition of harassment, including those bullets. Verbal, physical conduct are both included in that definition, and bullying has an additional definition. This is all included in the materials packet. So this is all in existence prior to this. I think the 2 biggest pieces of this annual report are really to share with you what's happening and what resources we have available in the district, in the buildings to help teach, promote, deal with bullying and harassment reports, and then obviously the data that comes with that. I know we've had numerous conversations at the board level around the speak up, speak out materials and how critical they are in our ability with law enforcement in the community to respond prior to things becoming tragic. And I think that's a really important piece to continue to highlight, and the funding for that is always held in the balance a little bit. So I wanted to speak to that a little bit more tonight. We utilize second step K-8 as a kind of grounding resource in terms of materials that we can use universally among all buildings for preventative instruction around bullying and harassment. There's a K-5 version and a 6-8 version, so they do separate those out into the 2 levels. We have a number of materials that we receive from DPI in addition to other resources that our counselors, deans, principals are pulling in when needed. So this is kind of that universal piece, and then we add to that. So here are the numbers specific to the bullying and harassment data in EduClimber. So I think there's an important point around the work that went into developing our bullying and harassment investigation process. It's really important that we document total incidents and then those that are substantiated versus unsubstantiated after the investigation happens. So that's why you see three numbers. Their total incidents, 151 that reached the level of bullying and harassment in the system. 113 of those were substantiated, 38 were unsubstantiated. So on this slide, I have the school breakdown for you. First school is our middle school. I would say that follows typical national trends around being a difficult time in life where we're all really figuring it out how to interact with each other. So that is obviously the most incidents are occurring, but it does mirror state and national trend data that I was able to find. And then additionally, high school, Four Corners, Northern Lights, and Bryant on that left-hand slide. The location, incident locations are noted. Classroom is the number one location where these events typically occur, according to our data. I'm going to go to the next slide, but if I need to back up for any questions, let me know. And then ethnicity breakdown and a gender breakdown. We can drill down into this data by student, by day, by grade, etc. I felt like these four graphics captured some of the bigger pieces of data, but if you have additional questions, EduClimber provides us really great filtering ability to look at data very specifically. But in general, for the policy, this was.
I might have missed it.
Yep.
Is this numbers of students being bullied or is this numbers of students bullying?
These are reports of bullying reports, so being bullied.
So the demographics, are those ones being bullied or doing
Doing the bullying. Yep. The aggressor, not the victim.
Do we keep victim stats then too?
We do. We keep and have to report a number of pieces to the department as well.
As part of our bullying investigation, we make sure we capture, see if there's patterns and things like that. So, okay, yeah.
Other questions?
We'll just stack up previous years. Do we have data on those or?
We have kept much more accurate data in the last year, and I have not given this specific report. We talked about that this year. So this was kind of where I thought baseline could be. I can pull data for you. I started there with historical data, but it's not lining up. We don't have, this was the first year we tracked substantiated, unsubstantiated within EduClimber. So I can pull back from state reporting, but not from EduClimber as we change.
I also think we need to continue training on what is bullying, what is harassment versus disrespect, insubordination, or teasing. There's a difference between the word bullying is misused often, and so we need to keep training on what that truly is.
So when you say incidents, it could involve 6 students.
Yep.
Bullying one kid.
Yep.
Is that the demographics go into that
Yep.
6 students?
Yep. You can drill down by the incident, by the student, obviously. Didn't wanna jump back here.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Any other?
As part of that training you're talking about, Amy, happen when you substantiate or unsubstantiate this. So that's like, this isn't bullying.
Yes.
And then there's a training moment there.
Well, part of it is we work with our principals in August to provide training around the bullying investigation, making sure it is substantiated versus unsubstantiated. If it's been reported as bullying, but it needs to be recoded to something else because it was miscoded. So training principals in August, and then, yeah, I would say most of that training happens on one-to-one at the school level when those things happen, but I think we do some of that through public school works and things too. So, yeah.
And the counselors are a big piece of a lot of that investigation too in the
Sure.
moment. So,
And deans.
and deans at the secondary.
Thanks, Kate.
Another
Yep.
update, yeah.
On that one.
AGR. Not going anywhere. I don't have any graphics for AGR. I feel a little broken record, but I want to make sure that it's clear. So AGR is Achievement Gap Reduction. It is a DPI semi-funded, it is not a fully funded, attempt at reducing class sizes. And originally, it has modified over the years, and we have the ability, in our schools that receive Title I funding to use a variety of resources to meet the need for this grant. So we have the ability to reduce class sizes under 18:1. We have the ability to use instructional coach support for teachers be able to gain these funds. And then tutoring is also a third option. Principals have to report this information by building, by year. I kind of like to do a summary for all of you for all of the buildings. But essentially, the reporting requirement for DPI around the money that we get to support lowering class sizes and trying to reduce the achievement gap is pretty minimal. And I look at Dave because I don't see the fiscal piece of it. And I think so what we're required to do is to create goals by grade level, by building. And then that we have to, principals have to report out on that to the DPI. What I like to share, one, I like you to just be aware. So I think it's important that you're aware of that term, AGR. At the elementaries covers grades K1, 2, and 3. So it's that early intervention, those grade levels at the elementary level. We utilize FastBridge assessment data to set those goals so that we have universal goals at all of the elementary level grade levels that are associated with this grant. And we also report out. We set the goal as students will reach the benchmark, which is the 40th percentile nationally, or demonstrate growth from fall to winter to spring. And so we report out on each grade level at each building by each assessment. So in kindergarten, we report out on letter sounds and decodable words, number sequencing and number identification. First grade, we report on decodable words, sight words, decomposing numbers, and place value. And then in second and third grades, we use the adaptive reading assessment for both reading and the adaptive assessment for math. So it kind of pulls all of those skills together. In general, I will always come back with the specific data in my fall report. But in general, we saw some really solid growth at our first grade level this year. Our kindergarten saw some really solid growth as well. We continue to support pockets of where we're seeing some stagnant growth across the district and continue to investigate into that. But in terms of the reporting requirements for AGR, the principals will get all of that information submitted here in June to the DPI. Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thanks for coming back tonight. Also that evening, Aaron Liebers, Robin Reckinger, Wendy Bender, Aaron Bezzi, Caitlin Zatrock, Kyle Schurz had a presentation about secondary standards-based grading. Dina Hagan from Director of Student Services. Can you speak on that? Sure.
Yeah. Sorry. I'll be brief because I already talked last week. And I apologize, I don't have a nice print off Lee to read from, but first of all, I want to thank you, Lee, and everybody else, not just Lee. It's, you spoke for a good group of individuals here about SPG, and I appreciate the email as well with the information. I think it's hard to ignore, we talk all the time about having data to back up our decisions or choices that we make. And we have physical data here. We have teachers, we have experts, in my opinion. A lot of staff, 20 years plus, have spoke or reached out to us. They're the experts on this. They're the ones that are in the classes implementing SPG every single day. And I think it's important we start listening to the staff as a whole in regards to this topic. I think we as a board do have the ability to bring up this topic and look into it and try to fix it and try to help there to be, I guess, a mutual understanding on SPG and how we can all come together and make it better. You know, I heard the comment last week and I know Lee said it. I wrote it down before he said it, but one of the comments that were made is if we change something, then it wouldn't be SPG. My opinion is, doesn't matter if we call it SPG. Doesn't matter if we call it traditional. I think all that matters is that we make a system, a grading scale, whatever you want to call it, something that works for the Superior School District and not care necessarily what it's called. It's pretty clear and obvious to me that while there are benefits to it, there are also cons. We've heard plenty of the benefits, we've heard the cons. We can't sit back and just ignore the cons. We as a district have a motto of all means all. We've heard it so many times, month after month, it seems like. But it's not something we necessarily follow. SPG in its current state does not meet all means all. There's students that are negatively affected by it. There are students that benefit from it. We got to come together and find a way, if we truly mean all means all, to find a way that it benefits all our students. Otherwise, we should throw that model out the window and consider it unattainable if we're not going to even entertain how we can reach every student through this grading system. We agreed last month that we would talk about this again at a board level. I think it was put off to October, but I really think it's important that we, as a board and a district, try to push this a little sooner with the teachers, with the staff, getting both those groups together and really sitting down and talking about it and trying to find a way to fix it. You know, I've heard tonight some suggestions on how we can go about fixing it. And I think that's important that instead of, again, this isn't one group against another group saying, well, we're told to do SPGs, we should just do SPG and that's it. And we got another side saying, well, this is how we can fix it. This is how we can compromise almost in a sense. I think we need to come together and figure out how we can compromise and how to make SPG something that our district can be proud of and our student and all our students can and use to their best ability. Because I do want to see a high graduation rate, but I also want to see students retaining knowledge, retaining the abilities that they're going to need in the real world, not necessarily for college, but for higher employment outside of college. I think we are lacking and we need to come up with something better. I think the formative does need to be looked at. And I think we as a board and a district can say, let's get together, let's put a meeting in place. Let's talk about it. Let's find a happy compromise and make it the best we can. So I won't say much more than that. Lee, and the rest of you, I completely agree with you on this topic. And I guess I won't echo any more that Lee says. He summed it up very great. But I think we as a board need to start listening. 2 years of data for surveys, that data has not changed. We need to start listening to our data, our experts.
I mentioned this after the last meeting. I didn't know that it was going to come up, but I don't deliberate. Board ultimately does what it wants, but I feel compelled as legal advisor to have to speak to that issue. After the last board meeting, this is a policy-making board, and individually getting into the topics that you're getting into, board has discretion, wide discretion to do a lot of things, but going into making determinations on a fixed for standard-based grading is not a policy board decision. You can control that to some degree through the administrators, but it's just a scope question. And I'm alerting you to it. I don't stop you. Mr. Sims certainly entitled to speak. Everybody should speak. Things should be aired, but there are parameters which the board should operate. And because it's a policy-making board, I've not seen a situation where the board essentially stepped out of that role to undertake what would be like a director of educational services decision. That person could be disciplined by Amy, or Amy can be overseen by the board, but effectively That's this board stepping into making a determination that is based on the educational experts that you hire for that role. So it's just a caution. I thought about it long and hard after last week. I didn't know what was going to happen last week. It seemed like some of the presentations went one direction and then some of the speakers went other directions, but it occurred to me at the time, and there seemed to be a lot of interest in it, but I would not be doing what I should be doing for this board if I did not say what I just.
So Kyle, is that, I understand that this may not be a board decision, but is it okay to have these open discussions because there really is no other forum for that?
Well, that again, that'll get into me having to address some things that I probably shouldn't wander into, but that's where you have control over the administrator. If there's discussions that are happening internally and forum being provided, which I understand there was some arguments about that, questions could be asked about whether the forum is being provided or not. But there's a ton of things that this board doesn't provide a forum for. If somebody says my child received a grade that I don't like, the board doesn't get to do that. The teacher gets to do that. If the teacher's a problem with the parent and it's parental, it goes to the building principal. It goes to the education. It goes to Dr. Starzecki. So
I think I just add, I've asked the board multiple times to allow us to work with Aaron and Crystal, to work with the teacher, to identify our issues that need addressing, and it's been 7 days. So
Yeah,
it needs time. And
only
we
thing-
have shared leadership to meeting tomorrow. We have this on the agenda to talk about next steps with a large group of teachers to talk about next steps.
Yeah, so I agree with Kyle to an extent. But the superintendent here, she can sit here and hear our concerns. We might not, as a board, facilitate, the changing of a program. But the superintendent can sit here and listen to our concerns and listen to the concerns. And the superintendent or administrator, we're calling it these days, can facilitate that. She's got the authority to facilitate that. And it's important for her to hear our concerns as a, whether you agree with it or disagree.
And I've heard your concerns, I've heard our teachers' concerns on all sides of the spectrum, and now we need to sit down with teachers and do the work. So.
And so then my question is, because again, we talk about the chain of command. And so if people have followed that protocol and have gone to the principal and have gone, to you, the next step is always the board. So how does that?
I'd argue some of the problems haven't gone through a process for us to be able to problem solve those.
Okay.
Is there harm in having that conversation between us? Because that's the only
Right.
time we can
This is
speak
the
to
only
it.
time.
And for us to have a conversation, and so.
you can have conversations with the administrator. You can have conversations, between non-quorum groups of members. The concern always is the precedent that's being set. Scope issues on a board, and it really has nothing to do with this issue. As a human being, I listen to both sides and I get the debate as a human. But as a matter of precedent, scope questions are always one of what kind of precedent is being set, because effectively, if this kind of decision can be taken and made and redirected at a board level, why can't a parent come in and say, I want this board to change my child's grade?
So someone-
The contrary to that is when you have an individual, something true. But it's kind of spurred into more of a district situation. It's a district wide. It's not something that's necessarily just one child, one family.
You could change my hypothetical and you could say there was a teacher that was, say soundly, many members of the class, parents of students that were in a particular teacher's class didn't think a teacher was doing something correctly. Something like that could happen. If that person came here and said, I want to talk to the board about that teacher, that would be completely inappropriate. So That's, my concern runs not to the issue. I have zero dog in the fight. I respect Mr. Sims a lot. I consider him a friend. It's 100% based on what, generally speaking, I mean, I get retained in different contexts to give seminars on boardsmanship and how boards are supposed to interact. Get paid separately for doing that. And one of the scope concerns is always that, is that there has to be a chain, and there has to be a allowing the administration to do its job. You can be upset with the administration, say, I don't think that you're doing your job. And you can correct that, but to essentially effectively bypass the administrators that are present and take the issue directly to the board sets a precedent that other issues that are outside the board scope can be addressed by the board. That's the concern.
And I think it's important to recognize our policy on it, 5421. The board believes that the district's grading system should be a reliable system and one that ensures each student's grades signify accurately his or her degree of accomplishment of those expected learning outcomes, which are to be stated for each program at every grade level. The board directs the superintendent to develop procedures for grading.
So then really last week, the whole thing then really shouldn't have been on the agenda then. I mean, because we had people come in to speak for obviously one-sided.
I think you guys get updates on lots of things that you don't act on. I think we have to have the conversation. We need to make it better.
Right.
But I'm just asking the board to task us now to address the concerns and bring you an update.
And you could swing that policy a different way. The board directs the superintendent. Superintendent doesn't know what to do unless the board has a discussion, tells her what to do.
What?
You could look at it that, you could look at it as a way as we just delegate, do what you want. So I think that can be interpreted different ways, but I'm not talking tonight because I'm saying you haven't done anything in a week.
No.
I'm talking tonight because it's my only opportunity. I'm not gonna get it for probably months at this point, if ever. So.
I feel compelled to share a little bit too, but I don't know. I mean, I guess there's really no point, but I mean, I struggle as well with the intrinsic motivation, and I've said that since the beginning. I've said it even when I was running for my county and stuff. Even as adults, intrinsic motivation is very difficult. Again, we are motivated by something. I think that a positive, I don't think anybody can argue the philosophy of SVG. We want our kids to attain a standard. That is very clear. It's how we get there. I think that people are struggling with how can we get to that point where we are doing what's best for kids. I do think that, some of the things that could be dealt with if formative can't, then the deadlines, the retakes, those are all things that can be put on the radar of possible changes. I also have a hard time ignoring the surveys that we've received over 2 years. One was to all teachers, one was to just the union members, but they both did show that some change needs to probably take place. Even with our students, the survey with the students, it's hard to ignore. They're even identifying that there are some problems with the current model. I think what Ed said too, we want to make sure that our grad rates stay high, but not at the expense of learning or lowering the bar. And I say that really, really respectfully. Our grad rates, 84% was it 2 years ago? And now we have significantly raised that. And that is due a lot in part to our teachers and staff and for the hard work that they've been doing. But I also want to make sure that we're maintaining a level. That's again, training our kids to be ready for the real world. So
I'd like to highlight another email that was brought to us that also was supportive of standards-based grading, but also had some improvement recommendations. And we as a board don't get to have our personal preference. We speak as a board. So you can personally support one cause or another, but as a board, we shouldn't be sitting at a board meeting and saying this person's right, that person's wrong. What we need to do is allow the people that we hire that have specific degrees about this information, who've done the research. This teacher that emailed us had excellent suggestions. Things take time. They take time. They take longer than 3 years when you have 300 some teachers improving things. It's gonna have to go through some bumps. We're gonna have to have people speaking out, likely saying, what can we do about this? But it is not our decision at all. At all. And why are we spending this much time as a board on this issue when we have plenty of other things that we should also be doing? And you all know this isn't something that you would usually bring to the board because it's not a policy decision about which curriculum or grading system we use.
I do think it's important. I think it's important for, again, we as a board were elected by the community, by teachers and staff, and we are the representatives. So it's not, you're absolutely right. It's not just our preference, but when we are hearing and seeing surveys and things, I think it's our duty to, again, have discussions. We may not be able to make changes and vote on things in particular, but we have a duty to have the conversation.
How many? How many is too?
This is our first.
Enough? Is it?
This is my first on
That's as
SPG,
many as we need.
but,
It's our time.
and I do think there was somebody that made the, was it called an employability standard that districts have added for standards-based grading? I thought that was there are good things that people have positive suggestions for that can be taken into account.
And I'm just gonna say this, I get some flack, but don't tell them what they can and cannot come talk to us about.
I never said that. I never said that, Ed.
Can I just say one thing? That not to reiterate everything that was said. Mine is more of an apology for last week. I feel like for myself, I did not represent myself well. And maybe the way I spoke, represented, I thought. So I apologize to the other board members. I'm not apologizing for what I said because I believe in what I said, but the way I presented it was poor. So I apologize to you guys for that.
Thank you. I'd like to move on. The other reports that we had that evening, Dina Hagan, Director of Student Services, a special department update. Carrie Saunders, Director of Diversity, Equity and Inclusion, gave an end of the year of DEI update.
Motion acceptation.
Second.
Motion the second. Accept the Teaching and Learning Committee report. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. On the Budget Insurance Committee, for informational items, we had our report of our revenue at this point and expenditures. Any comments, David, at all at this point? I know what's coming up next, so maybe.
I was, when Kate was up there talking, I was trying to find the amount because we just got an AGR payment. We'll get it in our bank account tomorrow morning. So, she said AGR the funding only covers a small portion of it, but we did get a nice chunk of it yesterday.
Oh, good.
Good.
Action items, gifts, grants, and bequests. Administration recommends approval to accept gifts, grants, and bequests received in May of 2024.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Please just like to say thank you as a board for that.
Very, very impressive list again. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Now the new action item. What was in red? Administration recommends the approval of resolution 24-03, authorizing a taxable tax and revenue anticipation promissory note for cash flow purposes in an amount not to exceed $5 million.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the new action item. Is there any other discussion?
I think the biggest thing I just want to emphasize with this, it isn't like we need this $5 million right now. Just whenever I do something, I always have to have a backup plan. What if the state decides that they shut down the government or whatever, and we don't get our $8 million payment that we're supposed to get at the end of August, and all of a sudden I can't make payroll? What this does is this puts money in the bank. If we need to pull it, we can pull it out. If I don't need to use it, I don't pull it out, pay interest on it. You're gonna see this as a yearly thing. You're actually gonna see it like 3 times in the next year is what my plan is. Because it has to get renewed for every school year. So my plan is when we approve the budget at the end of October, there'll be another resolution in which we pay this off, get a new line of credit for another $5 million. I'm estimated about that. And then actually next July, what I really want to do, don't hold me to it because I'm making a lot of promises down the road, but I really want to get a preliminary budget from you guys in July. It's going to be really, it's going to be wonky because we get into the biennium and I don't know what's going to happen with the biennium next year. But tied into that is this resolution, because once you guys pass a preliminary resolution, I can get this. And then from that point forward, you'll see this resolution and a preliminary budget in July. And then it'll just be the status quo. Hopefully we never touch it. Hope we don't have to, but I'd much rather have it and not use it than need it and not have it.
So you said we'll have a budget every July then?
You said comprehensive, right?
Is there limitations on the use of that versus just giving that you were district a blank check for that 5?
You get us what we can use for this line of credit.
Yeah.
No, just Prime's 8.5. We got it at 8. So they're just gonna charge you a lot of money. Yeah, money isn't cheap anymore. It used to be cheap a couple of years ago. Now it's a lot of money.
Is that only if you use it?
Right. And that's where this is set up with a line of credit. What it is I go to our NBC, our bank account, and they have this big account that says $5 million. I need $1 million of it. I dump it into our AP, our vendor account, which is our main fund 10 account. And when I'm done using it, I throw it back in there. So if I only need it for a week or 2 weeks to cover a payroll, I dump it back in there and only pay the interest off of the time I had it taken out.
Days, yeah.
And then
You really don't see using this for a payroll. I mean,
yeah, payroll, I mean, we pump out, $1.5 million of payroll every 2 weeks. So, yeah, AP is minimal compared to percent.
You foresee a need to actually use this?
Well, we might need it in maybe towards the end of, the big break is the beginning of November, beginning of December. That's where there's the biggest lag. We get a nice chunk at the end of August, then we don't get anything. And then we're just flush with cash come the middle of December. Because we get QA'd, and then we roll into February, we get taxes, and then we get a big chunk of taxes again.
Dave, there used to be a really nice graph in the budget book that we used to do in October that showed cash flow over the course. That might be helpful just to make sure that's in there. You can see where there's more challenges in the course of the year.
Yep. And I mean, we didn't have a lot of that previously when I started, and we have dashboards and stuff that I can go in and see what our cash flow is going to kind of look like going forward. And that's where, again, this is where managing. I don't think we're going to need it. In all honesty, I don't think we're going to need it. I don't tell the bank that, but I really don't think we will. But again, like I said, I want to have it just in case.
If they're watching this.
Meaning you
Then they
just
know.
did.
I just told them. Wait, amateur.
I have 2 quick questions, please. Is there a fee to set it up, or it's only if we take it out, then the interest?
There's a resolution piece. We have to get lawyers. Resolution.
Sure.
Make sure. Just for the bank.
And can we use the same one, or do we still have to
Yeah,
get attorneys every
it's
time?
a minimal
Okay.
resolution fee when you're talking about
Sure.
$5 million.
Yeah.
The bank, they cannot charge us a fee.
Okay. Cool. Okay. And then, so say the emergency situation, which you're preparing us for, Plan B. We do have to take out part of that money. How are you going to prioritize like paying that back? Like, would that be your top priority then? So we're accruing the less interest, I'm assuming, but just curious.
Yeah, I mean, because it's so expensive to borrow that money,
Yeah.
that is going to be.
Okay.
And we just evaluate how we do with the AP side.
Right.
Not a district that's full time that floats bills. Don't pay this one, but pay that one.
Yeah.
We're not at that point. If we ever get to that point. It'll be in there. But 8% interest is that's the number one thing we want.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. There were no item.
Motion to accept budget insurance.
Second.
Motion and a second to accept the Budget Insurance Committee report. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying
Aye.
opposed. Motion carries. Other reports by members of the board. Graduation was wonderful. Nice job with the weather. We were all worried about it, but
Job, Aaron.
it went very well. I've enjoyed the opportunity to give some of my ducks back to some of the grads, so.
Excuse me, again.
As the kids came, for those that didn't know, as they came forward and they shook your hand, and some of them still have their little duck in your hand, so you're going, what the heck?
Thank you to all the principals, teachers and staff and students that welcomed us for our tours that we did. That was great.
Always nice to get in the schools, see what's going on. I know it's a busy time of year. We had a lot of unexpecteds on our visit. I know I got to pull the fire alarm at Cooper, so that was kind of exciting for me, but so I was there for a fire drill.
No blue ink.
No,
That was good.
no. So, it was fun.
We thank, where we got this thing from?
Oh,
Yeah,
New podium.
Manufacturing did our new podium for us. Yep.
impressive.
Thank you to them.
Any other district or program highlights, Amy?
Just that we had salute to service in May and honored our retirees. We're working on through our literacy training right now at the elementary level to be in compliance with the reading law. Summer school's starting up soon. And I just want to thank the principals and the admin and the staff at the high school for pulling off a pretty seamless graduation event. We had 299 students graduate. That was an impressive number.
308.
I think it was 308 is what I was told. Somewhere in there.
So in there. Good.
Guys, so do you have the numbers for summer school by chance or just someone?
No,
That's okay.
I'm gonna give a report in July about how
Cool.
summer school's going. So
All
high
right.
school, summer school actually started today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and everyone else starts next Monday. So
Okay.
in July, I'll give a report on kind of how things are going and numbers and stuff.
Thank you.
All right, final consideration of bills and pre-approved bills.
Motion to pay the bill.
Second.
Motion second to pay the bills. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Or motion to adjourn. Motion.
Second.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify, or roll call. Sorry, roll call.
Do you have to?
No.
I don't think you have
All in
to.
favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Roll call. All right, you got some things to sign, Ann.
I think you have to.
Everybody to.